Then it came all crashing down, and it was pretty overnight, but not 95%. So it was like you'd lose 50% and then you'd go up 10%. You're like, oh, we're back. And then you lose another 50%. You're like, oh, okay, we'll figure this out. You go through the roller coaster of emotions, first in denial, and then you accept it, and then you try to figure it out, and you get that motivation. Yes, we can get over this. And then you realize, no, nothing's changing. If you have not got a personal brand or actively thought about it, think about it. Start thinking about it. The landscape is shifting. And even if you have a business, the combination of having a personal brand and a business is going to yield you much more dividends than if you just had one or the other. Oh, personal branding, that's how it's working these days. They're not just looking at one isolated site. It's like the network of you, your brand on all different sites, and seeing how trustworthy you are. One exercise, which is oversimplified, but a good way to think about it is, if you could choose one word to associate with your brand, what would that word be? If someone landed on your website, could a caveman grunt out what you do as a service? It has to be that simple and not be overcomplicated.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Search with Candour, the podcast where I interview the best and brightest minds across digital marketing and SEO. I am your host, Jack Chambers Ward, and I am joined this episode by the fantastic Jacob Cass from Just Creative. If you don't know Jacob, you're going to learn a lot about him in this episode. And Jacob has done some fantastic things, including being a TEDx speaker and even founding, starting, creating and running the Brand Builders Summit as well. I know brand has been a big topic this year in 2025 throughout SEO and digital marketing, and Jacob has got some brilliant case studies, examples and experiences from his career to talk about, including what is probably the title of this episode, how he dealt with losing 95% of his site traffic a couple of years ago and how he's recovered from that. Basically, we get into a lot of different disciplines and how they all tie into marketing and digital marketing and SEO, and how brand and design and all that stuff kind of ties in together, and how it's really an interdisciplinary medium now in 2025, and how we can't be working in silos and just thinking of SEO as the stuff you do on your website. And I think Jacob has, like I said, some brilliant examples, some fantastic career experience, and one of the best audio and video setups I've ever had on this show, which I'm very jealous of. Jacob is a professional through and through, really, really engaging, and I hope you'll very much enjoy the conversation we had. It was a couple of months ago now. You've probably noticed I'm quite far ahead of myself in terms of recording. So this was recorded, I think, back in August, if I remember correctly, something like that. So a little while ago now, but it is still a hugely relevant conversation, and Jacob is a fantastic guy to talk to about branding and about website recovery and what to do with that and how to build your business even after you've lost 95% of your traffic. Without any further ado, here is my conversation with Jacob Cass, coming up right about now. My guest this week is an award-winning brand consultant and designer who has worked with household name clients like Nike, Disney, Nintendo, Red Bull, and Jerry Seinfeld. I feel like we might need to talk about that in a moment. He is a TEDx speaker, creator of the Brand Builders Summit, founder of the Brand Builders Alliance, host of the Just Branding podcast, and CEO and founder of Just Creative. Welcome to the show, Jacob Cass.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for that lovely intro. I do quite a bit, so we're going to unravel a bit of that. So yeah, let's have some fun.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, I was just telling you before we started recording, I've been listening to I've been watching technically the Just Branding podcast and really enjoying what you and Matt have been doing with that show. And like you said, you've done a lot of stuff in your career. You're a very interesting dude. And I feel like we need to dig into the Jerry Seinfeld thing just a little bit, because that was a lot of people talk about big brands, right? Oh, I've worked for Disney and Nike or big household names. I've never had anyone shout out a stand-up comedian before. So I need to know more about your work with Seinfeld.
Into it. All right.
Before we get into the main topic.
Before we get into the main topic. So for context, it kind of gives a bit of background on who I am. But at my heart, I'm a graphic designer. I classically trained as a designer. That moved into brand building, the cross-section of strategy, design, marketing, and all that good stuff. Where Jerry Seinfeld fit into this, I backtrack a number of years. I used to live in New York for about 5 years. I'm originally from Sydney, Australia, still live here, but I lived in New York for about 5 years. And that was the start of my career. And I went from being a student to working for big brands like the ones you name, like Disney and Nike. And then suddenly this project came along with Jerry Seinfeld. And I was like, wow, that was awesome. And he was bringing out a show called Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, which is a show on Netflix now. It wasn't on
It's
Netflix back then.
huge. Yeah, yeah.
It was an independent show for about 6 to 8 seasons. And yeah, I worked with a team at an agency that I was at in New York to help bring that brand to life. So worked on the logo for the show and the website for the show at the time, which doesn't exist now. It's on Netflix, and the advertising for it. So we did everything from banner ads. I created a typeface or a font for the brand as well. And yeah, did get to work with Jerry in the office once or twice. It was very intimidating. I was like the monkey on the tablet, designing with the execs and him over my shoulder, like the classic experience. Very nerve wracking as a young designer, but it was fun. And it was one of those tokens for your hat, or feathers for your hat, I should say. And yeah, that's the short story.
That's awesome, man. That's so cool. Like, yeah, that should, like you said, that show is huge now, and I love it when even obviously Jerry Seinfeld was already a name, but starting off independently and doing your own thing, I think is something we're seeing a lot of creators do over the last 10, 15 years, right? There's been that definitely that shift in movement, like you said, building personal brands and that kind of thing as well. And I'm going to kind of segue us into the main topic here. You brought some interesting topics for us to talk about, and I feel like you came with a really interesting kind of case study. It sounds like an experience in your real life of what losing 95% of your traffic taught you about long-term visibility. And I feel like a lot of people have experienced that recently. There's been a lot of issues in SEO, whether that's the September 2023 helpful content update that killed a lot of sites absolutely stone cold dead. There's been a lot of discussion about what AI mode and all the LLM stuff is going to happen. So this feels like, I know it was a few years ago for you, Jacob, but it still feels like a very, very relevant
It
conversation to have
hurts.
right
It's
now,
still
right?
fresh. It's still fresh. It still hurts. Yeah, man.
The wound is still
With
fresh.
yes, exactly. Yeah, so definitely, yeah, it hurts when you lose that much traffic, and I'm not the only one, so I can't. Yeah, I feel for everyone that went through the similar things as myself. And just to give context here, so I've run my own website called Just Creative since 2007, and that was built on SEO, right? A lot of my leads came through that. So my design clients and consulting clients came through SEO. And that was pretty much the backbone of my business for nearly 2 decades until a couple of years ago. That's yeah, we had two different arms of the business. We had my consulting side and design side, but I also ran a blog for creatives, designers, and that sort of clientele. And the blog was focused on things like logo tips, listicles, focused on best laptops for designers or best fonts for designers, best brushes for Illustrator, all sorts of creative topics. And that side of the business, the blog side, is what we're going to focus on now, because that's where most of the traffic was, right? It was an affiliate driven website, which pretty much eradicated these days in Google. And yeah, we scaled our team up to about 12 people across the globe, and we peaked at about 1 million page views a month, and that was the peak. And it was a big hockey stick graph when we looked at the stats. When we scaled very quickly, we went from 2 members to 4 to 6 to 8 to 12, and we were just throwing things at the wall, seeing what stuck, and a lot of things stuck. So it was kind of like the glory days back then. This was probably 3 years ago now. So to give dates, yeah, probably 22 was when the glory days were in terms of affiliate-driven sites. And yeah, then it came all crashing down, and that was over like probably it was pretty overnight, but not 95%. So it was like you'd lose 50%, and then you'd go up, 10%. You're like, oh, we're back. And then you lose another 50%. You're like, oh, okay, we can figure this out. We did it last time. You throw some more money at the wall and try new things and try to reverse engineer things, and that didn't work. So that's like a year later, and it's like, shit, this is not looking good. And you've reinvested this cash and tried to figure it out. And it's yeah, it's just a slow death over the years. And it wasn't just overnight. It was very steady and hopeful and like a lot of emotions. It was a roller coaster, literally. So it hurt, yeah. And we had to cut back our team. We had to cut back what we were doing. We had to re-strategize. We had to rethink, what does the future look like? How can we actually, get over this? And then you had this AI chap over here coming along, and that hadn't even come into the picture at this point. But it was the writing was on the wall. So we definitely scaled back and really fell back on the brand, and that was the Just Creative brand. And that kind of leads into the next topic, but I'll give you a chance to come back
Yeah, of
into
course.
the convo.
Yeah, I think was it that September 2023 helpful content update type stuff that where you guys
Man,
got you
I
mentioned
forget all the
2022 in there.
numbers, all the updates, because it was like one after the other, and then there was like a couple in a short amount of time,
Yeah.
and yeah, it was. Then it was like, oh, we came back, and then nope, we're just kidding. Yeah,
Yeah, I
so
remember all the SEO news sites covering that and then talking about it. And a friend of mine, Brandon Saltamacchia, who runs Retro Dodo and lots of other sites as well, he was heavily featured in that and really affected by that. Ended up going and meeting Google and all this kind of stuff. Like it was big, big news in the industry because I think, like you said, we'd maybe gotten comfortable and happy with the kind of golden era of affiliate sites and informational content and all that kind of stuff, right? And I think a lot of us for maybe had gotten like, well, this is that growth mindset, right? Like it's going to continue to grow, and like you said, there were little signs of recovery. I remember the news happening at the time. We were covering the news on the podcast at the time, like, oh, it looks like some of the sites are recovering, and they're back down again, and they're back up again, and they're back down again. It's like, oh god, this is so exhausting and that kind of stuff. And I felt so bad for so many creators and sites like yourself, Jacob, where you have that almost like push and pull kind of moment where it's you give that little glimmer of hope and then it's taken away again.
totally, yeah, it's a roller coaster. That's the only way I can put it.
For sure, for sure. What was your kind of initial reaction to seeing those? You mentioned kind of like the steady 50%, then kind of steady drop from there. Did you have an initial kind of reaction? Was there any thought of like, okay, we need to change strategy, we need to do something different, or was it kind of a wait it out kind of situation? What was your kind of as a
Well,
business owner and creator,
it's
what was that
a
kind of
bit
initial
of both.
reaction?
There's a bit of all of that because SEO, you can change things, but often it can take some time to see if they actually work, and you can reverse engineer things, but it does take time for Google to analyze, recrawl, and other people may be doing the same. So it was like, yeah, let's look at what they've released, their guidelines, and look at other big sites, see what they're doing, look at the people ranking number one, how are they doing it. So there's a lot of that, and yeah, it was just trial and error, and trying again and seeing what stuck. But some things did, and that was the most annoying thing. Is like some things actually stayed number one. I was like, why? Like, and it didn't make sense. And then others just like totally got lost. And then we ended up deleting like 80% of our content on our site, just leaving like
Mm,
the best content to make sure that we got seen as like a quality blog and site. And that worked for a little bit, but at the end of the day, they just got rid of affiliate driven sites. And the things that we do rank for these days, like there are some listicles and some articles that we do rank for, but it's very much related to our niche of design and creativity now, not like everything that we used to rank for. And we had everything from bloody like TVs on there, and nothing related to design or creativity, but it was tech in general we had as a bucket, and that's where we excelled, as well as creative topics like Photoshop and Adobe and
mm.
all of those things. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that makes again hearing other similar stories and funnily enough, one of our clients at the time was an affiliate network. We were having the conversation with them from the other side of the industry of like, oh, what's happening here? Like them realizing it from their side of things, how many of their partners and clients were then dropping off. And we're talking to them about their SEO side of things, like how do you sell an affiliate program to people where the affiliates are not being clicked on and you're seemingly, as you said, actively being punished for using affiliate programs, right? And it was a whole conversation, I think, in the industry where you had that kind of golden era of niche site stuff and where we had a lot of the big creators and big SEO names make a lot of money from this kind of thing, right? And for want of a better phrase, get away with a lot of stuff that you maybe wouldn't get away with now. For you, was there that kind of thought process of, okay, we need to completely change this thing when it hit that 95%? Was that a kind of like the killing shot was, this is done, we need to do something different? Or was it kind of that more, I don't know, like that difficult decision to make of, do we shift our strategy and try and keep this going in a different way?
We had different strategies in different verticals, so it depended on what that vertical was and the decisions we made. So, for example, we had fonts, we had tech listicles, we had software, we had you know uh, general like logo design and branding topics that were related to my client side of things as well. So those were kind of evergreen topics. So we're like, we didn't
Mm,
want to get rid of them. They were like big list link builder kind of topics. So we kept that, kept going with that. But the tech side of things, we looked at what got dropped off. So things that just we even tried gaming. We weren't a gaming blog, but we were getting links for gaming, and we ended up getting rid of all of those things because we were just getting lucky with whatever stuck, and some things did. So we learned what our playing field was in terms of Google's eyes, and kind of eradicated things that weren't being seen nicely by Google, and focused on the things that were. So at the time, we were still getting ranked for font articles, and we kind of doubled down on that instead of the tech side of things. So it was a very it was a slow process, just looking at pages and what got lost and all of that, and making decisions based on that over a set period of time, which was like a year and a half that we kind of did all of that.
yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And I think, yeah, we see this a lot when it comes to, you mentioned like deleting content and stuff, right? We've seen so many brilliant case studies across the industry of how that can improve. It seems very counterintuitive to people who aren't maybe, in working in SEO and working in brand and stuff like that. When you delete content, you actually can do better and get better traffic
Mm.
and better quality traffic and stuff, right? If you had been able to time travel and speak to the Jacob of 2021 or 2022, would you have done anything differently in that process? Maybe that leads, I might be segueing you into the brand discussion here very nicely, perhaps.
Mhm. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Uh, I I don't believe in changing decisions because it's all hindsight, right? And you don't know the future. It's easy to say, yeah, I would have done differently. I think we did what we could at the time, and we scaled very effectively. Like I said, we had a hockey stick graph, and we scaled, and we knew it was working, and it just worked until it didn't. And that's what happened. And you go through the roller coaster of emotions, first in denial, like, and then you accept it, and then you try to figure it out. And it's like, and you get that motivation, yes, we can get over this, and then you realize, no, nothing's changing. So it's just like you go through those emotions, and that was the experience. So I don't think I would have done anything differently, because that's just what I did. So I don't know if that's
Yeah,
what you're
man.
looking for, but
No, absolutely. No,
yeah.
I think that's an absolutely valid like stance to take, because you wouldn't be where you are now without that experience, right? And to be facetious about it, you wouldn't be having
Yeah.
this podcast right now, but that's obviously not a big
Yes.
deal. But like
Yeah.
where you are in terms of your career and your life would be different if that hadn't happened. I think that's a really positive way of thinking about something that, as I said, had such negative effects on so many businesses and so many creators at that time. I think a lot of people, using Brandon and yourself as examples there, have been able to pivot and take that as a learning experience and become better business owners, become better brand builders, become better marketers from that experience. The classic phrase of, you learn from your mistakes, right? The best people are the ones that have failed 99 times and then
Mm,
succeeded that 100th
yeah.
time, right? And I think for me, when I saw a lot of people kind of freaking out and panicking and having that moment of like, affiliate is dead, SEO is dead, that conversation we have every 6 bloody months in this industry, it seems like,
Yep.
when you actually think about it and you're able to reframe it into a learning experience, not to get too, well-being and spiritual about this or anything like that, but I think that is a really good way to handle business and go about that kind of thing. For
Yeah,
you, was
absolutely.
that a kind of is that kind of ethos you have in general when it comes to, you mentioned you've done a lot in your career, right? You've built a lot of communities and brands and done a lot of stuff. Has that been a kind of ongoing ethos for you in your career?
Yeah, I'm a big believer of that, and it really does come down to mindset and how you take on those challenges and the learning experiences, as you said. So yeah, it one thing led to another, and yes, those paths, you know, like you said, like I wouldn't be here. I'm just trying to connect the dots backwards, and the decisions I made because of that, it led me to create a large event last year, and that wouldn't have happened if you know the crash didn't happen, and I probably wouldn't have worked with some other clients that I picked up because I had more time to focus on things. So, and it allowed me to kind of focus again on building my brand up and coming back to design and creative work because I was managing a team and getting a little bit less away from the creative side of things, which is what I love, and because things were going so well. And I really did enjoy the data side of things, which I really found interesting because I'm more of a creative, the visual person. But when it came to looking at Google stats and pages and competitive research and keywords, it was kind of like a game. And it was fun to see the results in real time. So I kind of got addicted to that, and the results paid off. And yeah, I think because of that crash, I moved on and fell back onto my brand. And that kind of leads into the next combo is like I did have a brand, and it wasn't just my blog, right? I had Just Creative as the blog, as the brand and design consultancy, like a studio here in Sydney, Australia. I had all my socials, I had a newsletter, had many other things going on, not just on the blog side of things. So I could come back to that because I owned those platforms. Like the newsletter was a big one. I had an audience that wanted to hear from me. So I was very fortunate to have those things to fall back on. The one area that did suffer a lot was the lead generation through search
Mm.
for my clients. So that was the biggest challenge. I had to shift up my marketing and how I got leads and clients for the consultancy side of things. So I've more leaned into LinkedIn and Instagram of recent years versus using search as a tool. And that's just because it's been harder to rank for so many things, like just getting pushed down further and further. AI results and Google's location-based results and ads, and the story. So it's just have to shift and moving into different marketing and branding tactics.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're seeing a lot of, not even necessarily the brands that have been affected by those kind of updates, but I think brands in general that are succeeding in this AI powered kind of era that we seem to be barreling towards at the moment are doing that exact kind of thing. And it's been a topic that we talked about a lot. Basically, like the overarching theme of last year's conversations on the podcast was not treating SEO like a silo, not just focusing on Google, not just all eggs in one basket kind of stuff for your brand and your clients. And I think you're a perfect example of that, Jacob. Like, you have built a brand, you've built events, you've built a community, newsletters, all this other stuff that we don't traditionally think of as SEO. And, oh, that's not my job. That's email marketing. That's not my job. That's events and community and stuff. But
Mm.
actually, that can be game changing when it comes to things that shift. When you don't have control over a platform such as Google or any other search platform, you then have those safety nets and barriers and things to make you more resilient to that kind of change, right? Do you think that
Yeah.
is going to be a future for a lot of brands to kind of
Oh,
make it
personal
through and
branding,
bypass this stuff?
absolutely. Because that's how it's working these days. They're not just looking at one isolated site. It's like the network of your brand on all different sites, and seeing how trustworthy you are. That's what it comes down to. So how how visible are you online? How well known are you? How respected are you? And I hate to say, but like follower count is a big part of that as well, because it leads to proof, social proof. But it's not just that. So yeah, personal branding is definitely high up on my recommended list. If you're like a solopreneur, you have to grow a personal brand these days just to get that trust up. That's what it is. It's reputation building.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you have a lot of this kind of reputation management stuff being discussed and how important that is for LLM side of things as well when you're getting referenced in things like ChatGPT search and AI mode and perplexity and things like that.
Mm,
They really, really care about reviews. And like you said, your presence on social media, your presence in other platforms outside of just your blog or your website. And it's a conversation I've had with many clients before. There's always the example I use of an old e-commerce client of mine where the top searched question about their brand was, is this brand legit?
yeah,
And we had a whole conversation about like, oh, should we do an FAQ on our website saying like, yes, we are legit, trust us? And it's like, but if they don't trust you, why would they trust you? Why would they trust the
mm,
answer to that if they don't already trust you to be legit? That's exactly what a not legit company would say.
yeah,
So, okay, you need other people, like you said, you need people to vouch for you. You need that customer and user and community kind of trust built around you to actually confirm, yeah, they are a legit brand. Yes, they are reputable and reliable and all this kind of stuff, right?
yeah,
So
absolutely.
I think there's a big part of it, as you were saying there, when it comes to social followers as well. The example I used a couple of weeks ago, I don't know if you heard this story. Scarlett Johansson was talking about trying to get a film made, and she told a story of a studio head saying, like, oh, what's the budget? Who's involved? Blah, blah, blah. The main topic was how many total Instagram followers do your primary cast members have?
Mm,
It's like, what?
yeah, yeah,
That seems crazy.
yeah,
That's not budget. That's not like it's kind of a way of measuring star power in a way. And I think you're absolutely right, mate. When it comes to personal brand stuff, as much as they are vanity metrics, and as much as we will talk about like, don't worry about your follow count and stuff, that can be a big difference. And your presence and how active you are on social media can be the difference between a sale and not a sale as well, right?
yeah, exactly. And I did actually recently get a client or a lead from ChatGPT. They were looking at best freelance brand designers, and we came up as number one on their search. So that was interesting. And
Congratulations.
just yeah, I was like, wow. And then yeah, just last week I didn't realize this, but we posted a report on logo trends, and one of the members on my community was doing research on brand identity trends, and they
Mm.
sent me a screenshot saying your post came up. It was posted yesterday, and it came up straight away in my Microsoft Copilot search. And I was like, wow, I didn't even know that that was that fast. Like for it to be so connected and refer it. So there's something working on the back end. I've literally done nothing to achieve that. So if you're asking for tips on how to do that, I don't know, but I do. I do
Just
know that it
naturally good,
has,
mate.
yeah, it's just probably the years of having my name out there online and just being in different places, being referenced on different sites and not just my own website. Like, is Jacob Cass legit? I don't have any articles on that, so
Well, now we've answered it on this podcast, right? And this, then we
yeah,
can use this video or audio, whatever we want to use that as a vouch point, right?
yeah,
That's
exactly.
exactly. I think a lot of people maybe underestimate. Seems like a silly little thing, and obviously here I'm a podcaster. I would say this, but things like podcasts are a way for you to not only get your name out there, but be vouched for by other creators, by other people who already have an established following. And obviously, again, you know this as a podcaster yourself, Jacob, as well, from both sides of the interview and the microphone. You want to get guests on that also have followings to hopefully then they bring some of their audience to you, but
Yeah,
also being a guest on a show is also having the show's audience follow you and continue that way as well. And it's
yeah,
that kind of
absolutely.
mutual relationship. And it feels very similar to guest posting and a lot of link building tactics that we used in SEO years
Hmm.
ago that are now kind of frowned upon. But it feels
Yes.
like a kind of more holistic way of doing it in a way, right?
It is. And there's also the networking side of things, which is what I underestimated before starting the podcast, is that you kind of level up with podcasts. Like you get some guests, then you get some better guests, then you suddenly, I
Oh,
had
yeah.
this guest, now you get this guest. And suddenly you're exposed to new networks. And it's like, oh, Jacob's rubbing shoulders with this guy. And just by association, your brand grows in reputation because you're associated with someone that's bigger than yourself. So there's that side of things that you need to consider if you're trying to build your own personal brand or business brand. Uh, who are you being seen with? Who are you rubbing shoulders with? Because that's a big part of it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people maybe underestimate how small, especially the SEO industry is. Like, if you know someone, chances are someone knows them as well, and you're all
Yep.
rubbing shoulders with each other. And if one person says a bad thing about you on a podcast or in a conference or behind closed doors or whatever, someone
Yeah.
else is going to hear that as well.
Yeah. 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 Totally.
And that's marketing 101, right? That seems like it almost seems like we're having a lot of this conversation, but like you said, optimizing for LLM stuff is still a very unconfirmed, wishy-washy kind of thing situation we're in at the moment. There are no AI, AEO experts and all the whatever bloody acronyms you want to use. But for me, I think a lot of that reputation stuff has been proven to be effective for hundreds of years in marketing. We are back to like marketing 101 stuff in a lot of ways, where brand is hugely important. It's become the buzzword in a lot of digital marketing things for a reason, because it is that, as you talked about earlier, that resilience, that longevity of it, right? For you looking at other brands in 2025, what do you think like makes a good, resilient brand going forward? Is it being present in other platforms? Is it other stuff as well?
It's a multifaceted question, and we have to talk about what a brand is, and it's basically it's what meaning people attach to you, right? What's your reputation? That's another way to think about it. So as brand builders, we want to manage that meaning. We want to create the right perception in the mind of the consumer. So we do that in a number of different ways, and it's everything we put out and everything we don't put out as well. It all accumulates to what the brand is or is not. So with that said, the when you go about brand building, you need to understand a few things. You need to understand the value you bring, your offer. You have to understand your customer, who you're actually trying to target. You have to understand who you're up against, the category that you're playing in, your competitors. Those three things are kind of the what we call positioning, right? It's going to help define the position in the market. What you want to be remembered for. So you have to think, what do you want to be known for? Is it brand? Is it SEO? Is it a subsector of that? Is it logo design, for example? I was positioned in logo design for a number of years. So what do you want to be remembered for? One exercise, which is oversimplified, but a good way to think about it is, if you could choose one word to associate with your brand, what would that word be? So, for example, James Clear, you may think about habits, right? So, that kind of thing. What is your one word that can help you with your position? Because we have busy lives, we are over stimulated with so many messages every single day, and we need to simplify what we want to be remembered for, so we can be top of mind for people when they need our services or want to engage with us. So for example, I'm very focused on brand, strategy, design, but even our podcast is called Just Branding. I speak about branding all the time, so people associate branding with me. I have the Brand Builders Summit, I have the Brand Builders Alliance, which is like the brand builders community. So brand is my word. And yeah, I'd encourage you to think about yours. But then it doesn't stop there. You have to understand, what is your story? What is your message? And that's going to help with your identity. So things like your fonts, your colors, your overall vibe. And that's going to dictate your marketing messaging and all of your collateral and how you actually grow and scale. So it was a pretty long-winded answer, but that's what brand building is, right? You have to consider all those things. And so many business owners, they just skip to, I need a logo, a font, and a website, when they haven't considered any of those things. So that's what I do for my clients. I help them go through that process, helping them define their value, who their customer is, how they can stand out, how to position themselves, what's the story. That's exactly what I do as a service. So yeah, if you're actually going through this process, I'd really recommend work with a professional, or at least go through those steps to not just, do the logo and slap it everywhere. It's only going to get you so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Funny enough, it ties really well into a conversation I had with a client, let's say a couple of years ago now, where they were wondering why they weren't ranking for the thing that they wanted to rank for, like the one header term that like defines the industry. Why are we not ranking for this thing? I was like, well, you don't say it in your homepage anywhere, so that might be a start. You don't mention it. If I do a site search, whether internal or using the site operator on Google or whatever, like you don't mention it anywhere outside of one category page. So
Mm.
talk about it. Like you said, when you can narrow it down to a single phrase, a couple of words, a single word, if you really can, to narrow down your brand and focus, then that can really stop a lot of exactly as you're saying there, Jacob, like spreading yourself too thin or trying to run before you're walking kind of thing, right? You end up
Hmm.
building a site, getting a logo, starting an e-commerce store, and then realizing like you don't even say what
Yes.
you do on your homepage, mate. Like you kind of need to start from
Yeah.
the early stages. And
Yeah.
we literally added it was like artificial flowers and stuff like that, added that to the page title, wrote a bit of copy on the homepage. Suddenly they were ranking for artificial flowers in the UK, and I was like,
So simple,
ta-da.
right?
See, it was so simple, right?
You're a
Exactly.
genius.
Yeah. Oh, I'm such an SEO genius, right? It's like this ridiculous thing that seems like, oh, everybody's done that. We're all so clever and we're all been doing SEO for so long. But sometimes it really is fundamental stuff. And like you said, working with an expert in brand that can really hone down and get to those essential elements, the stuff that, as I mentioned earlier, marketing 101 stuff that resonates on a psychological level and all that kind of stuff, and the thing you want to be known for. To quote Jeff Bezos, like brand is the thing people say about you when you're not in the room.
Yeah.
So if, for example, I mentioned Mordy Oberstein, friend of the show, former guest of the show, recommended you on LinkedIn when I posted like, oh, I'm looking for guests. So he said, oh, I'm recommending some awesome brand people. So I knew straight away, without even clicking on your LinkedIn profile, without finding out about Brand Builders Alliance or just branding podcast or anything like that, I knew Jacob is a brand guy straight away. And that was just essentially word of mouth on LinkedIn, right?
Mm.
And I think a
Yeah.
lot of people underestimate the power of that. Word of mouth seems very archaic and stuff, but it can be a really, really powerful motivator if you can start narrowing yourself down like that.
Yeah. And to be honest, that's how a lot of businesses operate. It's referrals and word of mouth. But that can also be put you in a sticky situation as well. So if you're just reliant on referrals, that can dry up. It can dry up.
Yeah, definitely. Like we said, when it comes to online platforms, the same is true for word of mouth as well. Don't just,
Yeah.
I get all my
Yeah.
leads through word of
Yeah.
mouth.
Yeah. But you know how you're talking about just putting the keyword in the title, and that's literally what our strategy was. It was the one key phrase that we wanted to go after. This is in the glory days. Let's say it was a listicle, best laptops for designers. That was our keyword on the page. It was in the first paragraph. It was in the title, and it was in the
Yep.
H1s, H2s, H3s, and it ranked. Right. We had we had a high DR, but it was as simple as that. And then we had the reviews and all of that. But it was just the keywords, and that's what we wanted to go after. We didn't overcomplicate it. It was just like, that's what we want, and that's what we're going after. So let's put it in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not so easy these days.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's not so easy, but I think it is still having that, especially on something like a homepage or I see this very often as well, like the consistency of brand just not being there across platforms. I did
Mm.
a talk a little while ago at the Creative Language Conference that was talking about demonstrating your values as a brand and being consistent across different platforms. Take the example everyone uses, I'm sure you've heard this a million times, Jacob, is Pelosia, right? Everyone talks about Pelosia as a brand, like, oh, they're eco-focused, it's very like, personality driven, it's very, we want to be talking about our values, we don't focus on selling you products. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
cool. Even their newsletter, it kind of blew my mind. It was like the seventh element in their newsletter when you sign up is the sales, is the CTA. The rest of
Mm.
it is values and then charity and then why we do what we do and all this other kind of stuff, which is building that brand and showing, demonstrating those values. And if you don't do that on your socials, on your newsletter, on your website, one thing says, something completely different. Your About Us page on your website says something different to your LinkedIn about. I'm going to get kind of sus and kind of suspicious and be like, okay, well, which one is the most up to date one? Are you about this or are you about that? Right.
Mm. Yeah. And this is something I struggle with now that you mentioned that, because I do a lot of things, right? I serve clients in terms of branding and strategy. I also serve creative professionals, helping them with their business side of things. So I'm like a coach, I'm a podcast host, I'm a consultant, and you can send, when you serve different audiences, you can send mixed messages, right? And it's something that a lot of creative professionals struggle with as well, because they do similar things, right? They sell templates for designers, but then they serve, you know, business owners. So it is a balance that's I'm always struggling with. Yeah.
I'm the same way, mate. I am always trying to do a new thing or trying to start a new thing or try a new hobby or whatever. And often the case is I did a kind of experiment on my friend. Sounds more insidious than it actually was. But I basically like sent out a bunch of WhatsApp messages of like, when you think of me, what do you think of? Like,
Mm,
what am I to you in terms of the things that I do? Surprise, surprise, most people said podcasts because I've been doing podcasts for 15 years at this point. Like
yeah.
that makes sense. And but then in the podcast realm, I'm the SEO guy. So
Yep.
that there's if you're already in that niche and in that industry, you then need to readjust and re-understand. Exactly as you're saying there, right? Like you could be logo designer Jacob or brand
Yep.
strategist Jacob, or once you're already in that, you're coach Jacob as well.
Mm,
And
yep.
being able to, as much as I said, like consistency and stuff, right? Being able to adjust that to different audiences, and especially, I think this is very true. Getting into the bad habit with LLMs of like, teach me like I'm a 5-year-old, explain this to me like I'm a 6-year-old. If you're already in that industry, you like, for example, I can't design a logo to save my life. So you wouldn't have the same conversation with me as you would with somebody you're coaching who is another professional creative, right?
Yeah.
You would be able to use different language and different phrases that they are far more comfortable using than I would be as a person who can't draw or do anything like that.
Yep.
So I think you need to adjust your message and adjust your language in many ways. But I think that consistency can still be key in many ways. Do you
Yeah,
agree? You
absolutely.
seem to be
You
nodding
do,
along,
you
thankfully.
definitely, yeah, you definitely do adjust your messaging. However, on social media, you have static profiles, right? And you have
Yeah.
static bios, and you'll have people coming in different ways, right? Some people landing on my LinkedIn page will see that I'm a consultant and I run an alliance. They may not know I run a podcast, but on Instagram, I don't mention any of those things. It's just like I help you stand the flock out, which kind of ties in with my agency's branded, which is we have a flamingo mascot. We have a lot of like flamingo puns and things. We have a bit of fun, and that's what they see on Instagram. It doesn't talk anything about coaching or design or anything. So there's different messages and different platforms, and that's what I mentioned by struggle, because it's always a battle, right? Like, do I use this profile for getting clients, or do I use this for attracting client designers? So it's always a battle. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm like, even me doing research for this show and doing your intro, right? I was just like listing a bunch of different things over and over again. And that is a really cool thing to have. I love doing that research and reading through different bios and different social profiles for guests and things like that. That's part of the fun of the job.
Yep.
But it is always funny, like you said, when you get somebody who has done a million different things. And I think you often see a lot of people go through similar struggles. Absolutely. When you get stuck with, oh, how niche do I go with this is a whole other conversation, right? Like,
Yep.
okay, you might be a logo designer, but you're a digital logo designer, or you only work in a specific program, or I only do technical SEO. I don't do content marketing SEO. I don't do this. And I think thankfully we seem to be stepping away from a lot of that where, like I said, the era of the niche site is kind of behind us now. But I still think there is value in that specificity of your brand as well, right? There is still value in being clear on what you do and don't
Oh,
do,
absolutely.
your
If you
strengths and weaknesses and stuff like that, right?
Absolutely. And something that comes to mind is Donald Miller and his story brand approach. So, Donald Miller is a fairly famous writer. He's written a couple of great books. Story brand is one of them, one of my favorites. And there's something inside that called the grunt test. And I don't know why this always sticks with me, but if someone landed on your website, could a caveman grunt out what you do, like as a
Mm.
service? Like, it has to be that simple and not be overcomplicated. Like, when they land there, what do you do? What do you offer? How do I get in contact? And that's always stuck with me. And obviously there's a whole framework behind it, but it's yeah, I love his approach to story and selling, because it goes through, the hero's journey and everything. But that's a topic for another podcast.
I feel
Yeah.
like each topic we touch on could be a whole other podcast.
Yeah,
But
totally.
yeah, funny enough, I don't know how widely released it is. Have you heard of the party game slash board game Poetry for Neanderthals at all?
No, I haven't. No,
Okay.
poetry is not
Um,
in my wheelhouse.
this isn't poetry, trust me.
Okay.
This is essentially the grunt test turned into a party game. So
Oh,
you
okay.
have two teams and you sit alternating. So team one, team two around a table, and each team gets a stack of like 10 or 20 cards. And there is the top one has 1 point, which will usually be a very simple word or phrase, and then a 3 point option, which is the more difficult version of that phrase. So you could get pool and then also get Olympic swimming pool as your 3 point phrase.
Okay.
The key is you can't use any of the words in that phrase, obviously, when you're giving the clue to your partners. And the big thing with the Neanderthal thing is you can't use more than one syllable words. So you have to
Ah.
condense everything down,
Oh,
and
wow. Okay.
it's very similar to the grunt test, right? Like, what would a
Yeah.
caveman? How would a caveman describe you? I can't say the word podcast. Podcast. I can't say the word microphone. I can't say Jacob. No offense, Jacob. That's two syllables. Like, you really have to boil things down, and it's very funny from a party perspective. You also have a big inflatable club that the other team have. So if you start getting things wrong, if I say like, I am good at podcast. Podcast is two syllables. You get bonked on the head with the inflatable club and you lose that card, you lose that turn. But for me, turning it into a brand discussion, turning it into a game where you can kind of condense things down is a really interesting way of doing it. It's exactly the same principle there as the grunt test. The problem is with this game, people start saying words that don't make any sense. People start saying me do this and me do that as if I isn't a single syllable. I'm like, you don't have to talk like a caveman. You just need to
Wow.
condense it down to one syllable. But it
That's
is
funny.
really
We
fun.
could
And
we could
it's really interesting.
yeah, it sounds fascinating. And I was just thinking like how could you apply this to, a website or a brand story? And I'm sure if you chuck it into an LLM and say the name of that game and say like how do I what's the output of this on my website, in one word.
Right.
I'd like to see
Yeah.
that.
Copy like the little rule book into and then be like, now understand my website with these terms and this understanding. That'd be
Yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
interesting. I love that kind of what seems like a silly thing at the time. Like is a literal like 20 quid party game thing. Like it's not from the same team who did like Exploding Kittens and stuff like that. That kind of
Okay.
blew up in the card and board game space a little while ago. And there's variations upon it and all kinds of stuff like that. But I was having this conversation at work not too long ago in the Candour studio, and we were talking about this. And I was like, yeah, you could kind of boil that down into a marketing game. You could have our clients or turn it into maybe don't literally hit your clients on the head with an inflatable club, but for want of a better phrase, right, you could turn
Yeah.
that into the grunt test idea of, okay, how would you describe your brand in 5 words or less, or only
Mm.
using one syllable? Or as you said earlier on, what is one word people think? Do they think of Jacob design, Jacob brand? Do they think of Jack podcaster, whatever it is? There's always that kind of simplification of it all that I
Yeah.
think really helps you get to the foundation of it, right?
It's a big part of brand building, and I take my clients through a workshop, not caveman talk, but we
So
try
you're
to
not hitting
get
them on the
key,
head with clubs.
no, key attributes. It's a big part of the exercise is what do you want to be remembered for? Like, what are the key attributes? So, for example, are you based on friendliness, or perhaps you're high end,
Mm,
or perhaps you're no frills, or perhaps you're fun and loving? Because that's going to dictate your position and what your message is and your visual communication and your whole identity. So those attributes is such a powerful exercise. You can even go into brand archetypes. That's a whole other discussion as well to help form personalities for your brand. It's not there's a bit of woo woo in it, but it can also be a powerful exercise to help with attributes and personalities when it comes to branding. And yeah, my point is that those attributes can really help define your position when it comes to brand.
absolutely, yeah. I think that ties really well. What we were talking about earlier with the value side of things and separating yourself from everyone else. Again, marketing 101 type stuff, right? I am a more fun podcast host than the other ones who are more professional, or I am, whatever. I'm more likely to swear and talk about board games on this podcast than probably most other SEO podcasts. and I hopefully that resonates with some of the audience, right? That has
Yeah.
always been
But
my kind of
even if it
approach to
doesn't,
my
it's
personal
it's
brand.
your story and it's your point of view, and that's different and unique in itself, right?
Yeah,
And some people resonate with it, and other people won't. So, and that's totally cool, right?
yeah, absolutely. Again, I don't know if this has a proper attributable quote, but the if you try and appeal to everyone, you're going to appeal to no one, kind
Yeah,
of thing, right?
exactly,
Like,
exactly.
my rule for creating content has always been make stuff that I would want to watch or read or listen to, and hopefully
Yeah,
that means it will resonate with other people.
yeah,
And as
totally.
long as I'm happy with it, then yeah, fingers
Yeah,
crossed, and I don't
exactly.
lose my job.
Yeah. No, that's another great aspect of podcasting, right? Is like you get to learn from so many different minds and different points of view. And we have a whole podcast on branding, and every single guest we have on has a different lens on how they see branding and the experience they come from. And it always makes for an interesting discussion. And you can use different elements from different people's perspectives to bring into your own work, into your own knowledge. And I like to think about this is like a backpack, right? You often learn about new tools and new ways of doing things, and you can put that tool in your backpack and try it out at some time and bring it out when you need it for your client or your own projects. And if you hadn't heard that little nugget or that little tool or that little framework from that conversation, then you wouldn't have had that in your backpack. So that's how I kind of think about learning and knowledge, especially when it comes to podcasts and courses and things like that. It's just like knowledge that you can pull out when you need and then apply it.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's comes back around to what we were saying earlier when it comes to all eggs in one basket kind of approach not working, right? And having a broader toolkit allows you to do those kind of experiments, allows you to try new things. Sometimes they will work, sometimes they won't work, but at
Mm-hmm.
least you tried. And
Yeah,
I think that is much more productive and healthy for your career, for your brand to kind of do that experimental and testing and that kind of thing. And the same is true in SEO as well. I think testing and experimenting is a key part of a lot of us learning it in the early days as well.
totally.
For you,
Yeah.
do you think there's that element of kind of like you mentioned being a solopreneur and pushing yourself in so many different ways, experimenting and trying new things? Do you think that is a key part of what a lot of creators and brands need to do these days to kind of try new things because we're seeing such an acceleration of technology and things like that as well?
Yeah, everything's an experiment in my point of view, and we're all experimenting. You can, you can get knowledge and learn from other people, and try to reverse engineer things, but then you put your own take on it and you remix and rehash. I consider myself a creative drifter, and I go, I drift between different projects, and it keeps things interesting. So one minute I'm doing creating a digital product, then it's a big live event, and then it's a packaging project for a tea brand, and then it's like a financial website, or then it's like, some other project, and it keeps things fun and interesting. And you learn things along the way, right? How can I bring AI into this? How can I streamline this? Or, what if I did this? It's just like, it's a constant experimentation. It keeps life interesting. It also is a double-edged sword though, because you can lose focus, right? And if you focus on building up one thing, for many years, it would blossom into something much larger. However, it can be a little bit draining, especially for creative people that thrive on new endeavors and not just the daily grind. So yeah, double-edged sword.
Definitely, definitely. As someone with ADHD, I agree. I always trying to experience new things and always try to, experiment and test and even seems silly, but like I always want to watch a new film rather than watching an old film or that kind of thing, right? Like
Mm.
always trying to bring in
Oh
new
man, I
worlds
watched
and bring new things
Scarface
and try new things.
last week, and that was a great film. I had not seen Scarface for many years.
Oh, mate, what a classic.
Yeah, it was a classic. And I was like, this is the good stuff. It was just so good. Anyway, I totally cut you off, but I was just thinking about old films, and that was one that came to mind. It's like
No, man,
some of the old
absolutely.
films are great.
But my other podcast is all about bad movie sequels, so we could talk about films all day long. Trust me.
Okay.
Well, maybe we'll do that once the cameras stop rolling. How about that?
Uh,
Let's wrap things up with some recommendations from you, Jacob. How about one actionable thing you'd recommend the listeners and viewers to start doing today?
if you have not got a personal brand or actively thought about it, think about it. Start thinking about it. The landscape is shifting, and even if you have a business, the combination of having a personal brand and a business is going to yield you much more dividends than if you just had one or the other. So it's a combination of personal brand and business branding. I'll leave it
Awesome.
at that.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. I know I did a podcast early this year talking about personal brand a lot, and I said something I thought was kind of controversial at the time. I was like, everyone's a personal brand at the moment, whether you like it or not. If you are online, you kind of are, and you may
Yeah.
not be a celebrity, you may not be, actively building your brand, but employers care about that stuff.
Mm.
Potential clients care about that stuff. As I mentioned earlier, I will research guests before they come on the show. Clients and employers do the same thing. If they see
Yeah.
like, oh, Jack posts really weird stuff on Instagram. He's very professional on LinkedIn, but he's absolutely crazy on Instagram. Maybe think about that.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. You need to. Yeah. Got to pass the vibe check.
Exactly. Exactly. How about a tool, piece of software, anything like that you think deserves a bit more attention?
The desktop version of ChatGPT. I think a lot of people
Mm,
use the online version and they're not aware of the desktop one. It's great. Like all the projects and the UI and the speed of it, I think is underutilized, and that's one I'd recommend.
interesting. Yeah, I've not had, I don't think I've had anyone else recommend the desktop version specifically. That's really, really cool. And like you said, I like the way you can do a bit more of the project management stuff in there and it feels much more organized and much
Yeah,
more
like I have all
controllable.
different voice prints and different projects. So like I have like a LinkedIn one. I have all my custom GPTs. I have different projects like a podcast and my community, and they all have different voices and that's tied into each project. So I can just jump into each one very quickly. Another one,
Awesome.
just on that topic of ChatGPT, is a tool called AIPRM. Terrible names. I don't know who comes up with these names, but it is a plugin. It's a paid plugin that goes into ChatGPT, but it has pre-built prompts in there. So it's
Mm,
like, hey, I want to write a book. They'll have a prompt for that, and it's like pre-programmed already, and they're rated. Right, if they're really good, you'll see like the really good prompts up there. Or write an article, or write copywriting, or write marketing, or do my coding. There's all these prompts in there within that tool. So that's another one I'd recommend.
nice. And last but not least, a video, an article, a podcast, can be a film. You've already mentioned Scarface. Doesn't have to be brand related or SEO related. Something you've been enjoying recently that you'd recommend to the listeners and viewers.
I'm watching
Can be a
Rings of
startup.
Power
We
at
can talk
the
about
I'm watching Rings of Power at the moment. It took me a little bit to get into it, but like now I'm looking forward to each of the episodes and just like engrossed in that kind of world. I really love sci-fi and like Marvel movies and anything with amazing special effects. You know, that's the designer in me. So like amazing sets and Game of Thrones and all those sorts of movies and shows are kind of like in my wheelhouse. So yeah, that's what came top of mind.
Nice, good recommendation. I'm a big sci-fi fantasy guy as well. Absolutely, yeah, love all the Tolkien stuff, all the fantasy stuff. Big question: are you a Dune guy?
I watched the first one. I did not watch the second one, so that's a no.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yep.
I'm a big Dune nerd, so
Okay.
I will always, if you haven't already, read or watched or whatever, I always recommend it to people. Like, oh, I kind of like sci-fi. I'm like, it's a bit of a classic, and I think the second film is really, really good, just as good as the
Okay.
first. So if you
I'll give it a
enjoyed the
second
first,
chance. I'll give
I'd
it a second
recommend
chance. Okay. All
it.
right. All right. Cool, man.
Let's wrap things
Well,
up. Where can people
yes.
follow you across the webs, across the internet, Jacob? I know you mentioned a million different things, so don't feel like
Yeah.
you have to list
I'll
everything.
make it
Everything
simple.
will be in the show
But
notes.
first off, thank you so much for your brilliant questions, for having me on. I truly appreciate it. And thank you.
My pleasure,
If
man. Absolutely.
you're listening still, thank you for listening all the way through and putting up with my Aussie accent. But you can connect with me at justcreative.com. That is my main platform. You'll find all of my social handles at that as well, Just Creative. And I do want to mention we do have an amazing resource bundle that you can download on the site. It's called the Branding Briefcase, and it has so much inside. It's like our big lead magnet, if you will. And in exchange for your email, you get a ton of different resources, everything from ebooks to help grow your business, brand strategy, logo inspiration, and so much more. You can check it out at brandingbriefcase.com or just go to justcreative.com and it will pop up on your screen. That's how you can get into my world. And yeah, hit me up on the DMs. I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram mostly. and I'm always online. So yeah, thank you. Yeah,
Awesome.
live
Thank
on
you, man.
now.
It's been an absolute pleasure to have a conversation. Like I said, huge fan of Just Branding podcast, been enjoying what you guys have been doing. So really appreciate you taking the time to have a chat.
Thank you, mate. Thank you.
And that wraps up this episode of Search with Candour. Thank you so much once again to Jacob Katz for joining me. And thank you to you for watching or listening, wherever you're watching or listening. Hugely appreciate it. If you haven't done already and you've made it all the way to the end, please do give us a like, give us a subscribe, hit the notification bell on YouTube, give us a rating on Spotify and all that good stuff as well. I hugely appreciate any of that thing that basically helps spread the word and share the podcast around the internet. I hugely appreciate any comments, any interactions, all that good stuff that helps Search with Candour grow as we head into 2026. I've got some fantastic guests coming up throughout the rest of the year, don't you worry. Amazing people like Abby Bennett and Amanda King and loads of other people. Derek Hobson coming up in a couple of weeks as well. Some brilliant guests coming up, some really interesting conversations, and a variety of topics as well. So stay tuned for some fantastic conversations, fantastic guests over the next few weeks before we head into 2026, because it's getting closer to December. It's getting towards the end of the year. We'll have to check in on our 2025 predictions that Mark, Arnout, Yama, Begum, and I did the beginning of the end, I guess the end of 2024 heading into 2025. And we'll have to have a new round of predictions going up for the following year as well. I look forward to that. Stay tuned for that. Like I said, all coming up in the next few weeks or so. And of course, I will be here every single week. We'll even have some bonus episodes coming out in between the main Monday releases as well. So stay tuned for those. And I will see you in the next episode. Thanks very much and see you then.